Wait, I can't hear you. Your mic's off now.
God
Oh,
damn
there
it.
you go.
This thing is
Just go.
like it just turns on. I don't know if it's a design flaw or what.
Oh yeah, it's off.
Yeah, it's on now. But
Yeah.
anyway, technical difficulties aside, I just wanted to run some quick opinions on the news that happened recently. Like first, I got to start with this. Kaylin just shared with me this awesome tweet. So I think everybody knows that Elon was selling his shares recently, and he incurred about like $4 or $5 billion in taxes, right? And he was doing it to make a statement. Like he literally sold his old shares just to incur the profit on them, just to make sure he paid the maximum amount of taxes. Because the shares that he got recently from the his options, they wouldn't have. It would have been adjusted at a higher price, so he wouldn't have paid as much taxes. So he deliberately sold the old shares that have maximum profit, so he could pay maximum tax, just to make a statement. And then here, Uncle Bernie here, we must demand that the extremely wealthy pay their fair share. Period. And Elon goes, I keep forgetting that you're still alive. Want me to sell more stock, Bernie? Just say the words. Oh my god! He's got a lot of. I think he got a lot of fans.
The dude is worth like hundreds. He's worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Like he has more money than you could possibly spend in a lifetime. That's why he doesn't care, right? Like I love it, man. It makes me laugh.
The thing is, he's never cared. Like he wants to make a profit, but only so he has more money to do more useful things. It's never like I want to buy a yacht. Like
yeah.
You know, like I can't find a single picture of him on a vacation just living it up like anybody else. Nobody. Like not one picture.
Yeah. I would totally. If I was worth 200 billion, man, I'd have like a 400-foot yacht. Like it'd be a party. I'd be like all over that.
He's sold all his houses and he's currently living in a $50,000 bungalow in Texas, right outside SpaceX headquarters.
Is he really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That's funny.
So yeah, so like when people the other thing that bothers me that when people rag on him is like they don't realize he doesn't, unlike every other CEO, he doesn't take a salary. So he how is he supposed to pay taxes on the years that he doesn't get a salary? Doesn't get a bonus either. If he doesn't hit his performance milestones, he doesn't get shares.
Yeah, that's what I thought was kind of funny about that whole thing when everyone's like, oh, he's got all this money and this and that. And like, it's like, yeah, he's got money, but like he's basically just selling it out of shares. Like it'd be no different than like, you and I, to a certain degree, if we just own like a shitload of stock and it went up 20,000%, and, we were both worth $1 billion, like we might not have to pay taxes if we haven't sold any shares. Like, maybe I'm just working for $40,000 a year, but I have $1 billion in my investment account. It's like, well, yeah, I'm super rich, but I'm not using any of that money. So
I don't understand how people can't see that's exactly what happens with their 401k or RSP. It's there, it's growing, it's accruing money. Are you paying tax on it? Hello.
Did I hear that someone's like in the States or something, they're going to like, there was a bill that they're thinking about passing where they're going to tax people on like unrealized gains.
Unrealized gains, yes.
Which just absolutely, do you know anything about that?
Yeah. So what happened was the Democrats, they introduced two bills, like the massive spending bills, like the $3 and whatever trillion, but they never figured out how to pay for it. So as they're trying to pass the bill, they start to go, oh shit, we have to pay for this thing. And so they're randomly just like trying to grab at any revenue stream possible to try to pay for this thing. And that was one of the proposals.
There's no way that can pass. There's no way that can pass. Like, think about if you owned a stock and it went up 100%, and then you paid taxes on that gain, the unrealized gain, and then it dropped down, lower than where you bought into it. It's like now if you sell it for a loss, you've been taxed on money that you didn't even have to begin with. That makes no sense.
It makes no sense. And then if you give a credit for your loss, which offsets any gains, then you effectively back at zero. So like, why even introduce the thing at all?
I can't remember who told me that, but I didn't even believe it at the start. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
It's retarded. And on the subject of retarded, Rivian IPO.
You can't say that
I don't have another word for it. It just boggles my mind. Like Rivian IPO'd, was it $78 was the initial price, and it like instantly got bid up to like over $100. Where I think it got stopped. It got halted, right?
I don't know. I wasn't watching it on the day. I know it tanked like the first day, but then it's been going up. It's got like 2 or 3 green days now.
Yeah, that because I remember I was trying to set up a short and I screwed up because I never checked my account.
Yeah.
I set up a cash account and not a margin. Yeah, and then so I set my order, it never hit, but it's at what 130 right now.
Yeah.
130.
And they've sold like, well, Amazon's buying into them though. I think Amazon bought like what $200 million on the first day. I think it was.
Wait, did Amazon buy it from the open market?
Yeah, I was reading an article that said Amazon bought like $200 million worth at, I think, like $78 a share average on the opening day.
Oh, but what's $200 million worth to either of them? Like, it's like
Nothing. I think I'm pretty sure they want to get into like a few billion, from my understanding.
I know.
So like there's like there's
sorry, go ahead.
Stuff. Yeah, there's big stuff in the. No, I was just gonna say like there's obviously like big stuff in the future. Like if Amazon's putting that kind of money into them, like they know that there's going to be something there. It's just funny that like right now, considering they haven't sold any cars to the like commercial public, they've given like what 150 to their staff or something like that. Like there's no sales, and they're worth billions of dollars. It's just.
$100 billion they're worth. I'm gonna make a wild call just now because from exactly what you just said, it made me realize something. Because I know Amazon has a purchase order to Rivian for these EV delivery vans, which makes sense. But I wonder if Amazon is starting to take a position now for potentially a hostile takeover at some point, because Amazon's guys are sharp, and I hate Rivian not because of their product or their engineers, but because the CEO is an idiot. So I wonder if Amazon's looking at them like the way I'm looking at them, going, these guys are a takeover target. We're gonna get them for cheap.
Yeah, maybe they might sell out too, right? Like it'd be easier for Amazon just to buy a company like that than to try and start one on their own.
And also, like, Amazon's all about control. So it's like if they end up supplying your delivery vans, and you kind of want to control the source, right? Otherwise, you kind of have a liability out there. Like, what if your vans need maintenance and they up the price on you? Like, so there's a whole bunch of reasons to want to own the whole supply chain.
Yeah, 100%. Especially like if you're looking at something like Amazon with that kind of size, like if you're basically like subbing out to a private company, like they could just say, oh, we have the contract, so we're increasing your rates 20% next year, and you're kind of screwed, right? So,
did you know Amazon was getting into trucking and air freights?
No.
So that's a huge competitive advantage. This is what I do like about Amazon. Like, as much as I shit on Bezos, Amazon, the company, I love. So what they started doing was they started buying some little planes and whatever to do their own deliveries. And what they're and this has been their MO since the beginning, where it's like whatever they use for themselves, they realize that at least half the time it's unused resources. So like if we send a plane from our warehouse from Canada to Germany, it's coming back empty, right? So what they're doing is now they're advertising in Germany saying we're gonna give you this white label program where if you want to hop on our plane, we're gonna give you a discounted price versus UPS versus whatever any other shipper. And then so the plane, which has to come back anyway, now has paying customers paying for shipping from Germany to back to the US.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they do that with their trucking too. They have a bunch of trucks. They're hauling stuff all over the U.S., but they make sure it's never empty. So they started opening this up to their Amazon Marketplace customers. They're like, if you want to make a delivery from A to B, then hop on our truck. Fucking genius.
Yeah, like a discount for it. Yeah, well, it makes a lot of sense. Like any shipping company, you probably want to do that. Like you never want anything like a truck or a boat or a plane. Like nothing should ever be going anywhere empty. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just losing money.
That's so true. Actually, I should know this. I worked for Brinks. There was a lot of empty trucks. There's a lot of.
Yeah, I was gonna say I work in construction. Like I always want something on the trucks, machines, material, whatever. Like I don't want moving around empty.
That makes sense. That makes total sense. All right, so that's it for the news. Like I just yeah, you know what? Because I was going to touch on qualitative analysis anyway. I was going to use Vimeo as the example, but might as well start with Rivian. So I'm going to set the record straight. I like the product. I've seen the product. I actually know some of the engineers behind the design of their truck. So I know the truck is fantastic. The reason I'm not bullish on the company is the CEO. And this is what's called a qualitative analysis. You're not going to find this in like a balance sheet. You're not going to find this in any of the fundamentals, right? It's just kind of like a gut feeling, or you kind of just a character judgment kind of thing. And the way the CEO has been acting is like, I feel like his mouth is always writing checks that his engineers didn't have to cash. So basically he's saying stuff, they can do stuff that they technically can't do. And I know they can't do. And their engineers are in the back going, fucking guy, we have to not make it happen.
Right.
So that's one reason why I'm not with these guys.
That's like one of the main reasons you got into Tesla in the first place, though, is because you just liked Elon. Are we talking about that, like, like at the beginning of the year when we first started doing the podcast and stuff, and even before then, you always said, like, I just love the way this guy works. I love the way he runs this company, and everything else aside, you just know that if you got someone at the helm, like who's driving the thing, that's got a good work ethic and intelligent enough to do it, then that's good enough reason for anybody to invest in a company, in my opinion. Like, it's like if I was to start a company, like, I would invest in myself because I know that nobody's going to outwork me, and I know that I wouldn't let the thing fail. Like, I would literally work myself to death before I let something fail. So like, if I knew that about myself or about someone else who's running a company, like, even if everything doesn't look that great to begin with, like, if you know that they're going to be that type of person, then it gives you a lot of confidence in the position.
Yeah, you're right. I watched almost every speech he did, even back in like the PayPal days, and what I was trying to gather was his thought process. I'm not trying to look at a guy or any CEO like going, "Oh, are they charming? Are they good at speaking?" Because Elon's clearly not good at speaking. The guy's got a stutter, right? But I was listening to what he was saying, and more importantly, I was listening to his thought process. And I'm like, "Does this make sense? Is this what you want to see in a leader?" I've never heard a leader speak more clearly about his ideas than except maybe Steve Jobs.
Yeah. That's what I love about like trading and stuff, man, is like, I feel like ever since like getting into trading as much as I am now, like, it's honestly helped me in so many different aspects of my life. Like, I can look at any situation completely objectively. Like, I'm totally comfortable being in a room with 20 people that are, panicking or something, or saying something, or saying, no, this is the way this is, or like, oh, I hear this news article, and like, I'll be the guy that sits there and just listens to it objectively and says, no, I don't believe that. Like, I need to look into that. Like I'm that guy, and then I'm like, oh, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And like, I look like the asshole, but I'm like, I don't believe that. Like, I need to research that further. I'm not just going to take your word for it. And like, when you're out in society and stuff, like, that kind of thing comes across as like, oh, like, what the fuck's this guy talking about? Like, what do you mean? Like, you're not just jumping on board, but like, it just makes everything a lot like less stressful. Like, I never get riled up about stuff. I never get, like, just anything. Like, it just keeps you a lot more level headed, and you can really think objectively. And like, that's something I've learned from trading, is because like, when getting into a position, like, I have to be able to think for myself, because you can never make money piggybacking off someone else. So you have to be able to sit there and look at all these news articles and say, you know what? No, like, I'm going to do this because I think that that's the right thing to do. Even though everybody's telling me I'm wrong, I think I'm right. And then you roll with it, right?
Yeah. There's the other problem too, where I think new traders will hear something like that and go, oh, okay, so the idea is to be contrarian. But that's not what you're saying. You're saying is like, get your own ideas, found your own solution, or your own thesis. And then if it happens to match up with the group, great. If it doesn't, then do that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it comes down to, right? Like, that's the biggest lesson that I've learned, and like, since I started trading, is just be completely 100% objective in every decision that you make when it comes to investing and trading, and like anything, like business, just reading an article in the newspaper, like anything, just the ability to be able to look at something and not just be like, oh wow, this is crazy because it's it's in the news, it's real, or it's on CNBC, or it's in the Toronto Star, or like whatever it is, and just read something and just take it for what it is. Like, you have to be able to read something and think about it. And like, that's again one of the things I love about Elon Musk. And like, it was funny, I realized that about him when I was watching the Joe Rogan podcast, because that was the first time I actually like really listened to the guy. And like, I noticed that every single time, Joe would ask him a question, he would never answer immediately, and he never did. Like when someone says something, I can't think of an example, but it's like, like, hey, yeah, like, did you hear like, you know, these cars are really fast? Like, oh yeah, they are really fast. And it's because like, they kind of like repeat what you say.
Yeah.
He never did that. He was all like, he'd always stop and there'd be like kind of this awkward, like 3 or 4 second pause. And then he'd make an answer. And like, when I saw that, I was just like that helped me a lot, like in my trading, ironically, because I was like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, this guy's like one of the smartest guys in the world. And like, he never jumps in an answer. He always just sits there. He doesn't feel like he needs to answer right away. He thinks about it and then he says what he really wants to say. And I just found that so like, I just found the intelligence behind that like really inspiring. And I kind of like started fashioning my own decisions off of that at that point.
I did the exact same thing when I was researching Tesla. Like when I first started, I was like, wow, this guy's got great answers. He stutters, but if you listen to the content, it's fantastic. And then what I realized was the reason he takes such a long time is he's not just thinking about, oh, what is the right answer here? He's thinking about what is the best way for me to say this answer to this current audience so that they understand what I'm saying. This is like three-dimensional. It's not just saying what's the truth.
Yeah.
It's like saying it in a way that everybody can understand it. Brilliant.
And it's funny because that's like I actually read a study like maybe I don't know, probably beginning of the summer or something like that. I read a study that I thought was really interesting, and it basically said that like, you know, in layman's terms, people that use really big complicated words to explain stuff are usually the least intelligent people in the room. It's like if you take someone who went to school for like I don't know, like just for bodybuilding purposes, like let's say you went to school for like kinesiology, and you're like, oh yeah, you know, like when you're doing like a leg press or a squat, it's like you can feel it in your, you know, quadriceps lateralis. Or, you know, people that I don't know what the fuck that is, but like people that talk like are usually the least intelligent ones because I can't remember what the reasoning was, but it was like because they're trying to like show you that they know stuff.
Overcompensate.
Whereas the people that they found, yeah, but whereas the people that they found to be the most intelligent are the ones that can explain really complicated processes and information in very very basic terms to whatever their audience is to understand. Like it's like when I look like even like, you know, I'm not saying I'm super intelligent by any means, but like it's like for me, like I've been, you know, lifting weights and training in the gym and stuff for like 7 or so years now. And like I was talking to my buddies the other day and I was like, yeah, I was working my front calf on this new machine where you like lift toes up, you know, because like they knew what I'm talking about. Like I don't know what you know, whatever the hell the muscle is on the front of your shin, your tibia or whatever the hell it's called. But I was just like, yeah, I was working my front calf, like lifting my toes up. Like everybody I was talking to, you know, they laugh or whatever, but they know exactly what I'm referring to as soon as I say that, right? Whereas if I said the actual muscle, then I'd have to re-explain it again, and the person I'm talking to feels like an idiot because they're like, "What are you talking about?" And then, you know, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I know all this cool information." It's like, no, you just want to have a fluid conversation with the person you're talking to, and just have everybody understand everything. Like, what's the point in being like, you don't know what that is, or you haven't heard of this? Like, are you an idiot? It's like, no, I just haven't heard it. Just because I haven't heard it doesn't mean I'm an idiot. I've just never learned that before.
You know, it just made me realize something. It was probably ego has something to do with it because they're probably thinking like, oh, I just said something that confused everybody. I must be smart. Like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure it does. But like that's a sign of maturity and intelligence, in my opinion, is being able to be that person in the room that says like, you know, when someone says something, be like, you know, I don't know what that means, or I don't understand that, and get them to explain it to you, because then that's how you're going to learn. And you're also comfortable enough with yourself that you can be with somebody else who's explaining something to you or talking to you, whoever that person is, and be like, you know, I don't know what that is. Like, and if they laugh at you or whatever, just be like, I've just never heard that before. Like, I don't understand why it's funny. It's just something that I've never heard. So how are you expecting me to know this? You know? But like a lot of times people they'll just breeze over and they'll say, you know, if you're like, say you're working on your car, it's like, oh yeah, you know, like I had to change the, you know, the vacuum line because you know what happens when that breaks, and like it's just like, oh yeah, totally. But like you have no idea, right? You're just kind of rolling with it. Whereas like what you should do is be like, no, like what happens, and then they can tell you, and then you're going to learn something.
1,000%. I think it comes from Elon's physics background because Einstein said this quote, and when you said it, it immediately hit my head. He said, "Everything should be made as simple as possible, but no simpler." And he's saying this in reference when he's talking about how he developed quantum mechanics. Excuse me. When they're trying to develop high-level physics, it's like you could really get lost in the weeds trying to describe what happens with an atom in quantum mechanics, or you could just try to be like, okay, at the very distilled level, what is happening to here? What is the interaction between an atom and this and that, right? So I think it comes from the physics background, Elon's, that he thinks that way.
Mm-hmm.
But
I just love it, man. Like I love that way of thinking.
I think it's like you're right. Like everyday people should adopt it, and it would make things quite a bit. It would be quite beneficial, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
it's something that like I think as a person you need to be pretty confident in yourself to be able to do that. Like especially depending on what situation you're in. I mean, like if you're in a room full of people that are really good at something, or like whatever, like if you walk into a room full of say mechanics or something like that, and you take your car in because it's broken, like it's like you look in the movies or whatever, and you take it in the mechanic shop, and everyone's like, oh yeah, this is wrong, and it's like you're like, oh, what's that? And they're like, oh, you don't know what that is, right? And they try to make you feel like an idiot. Like you're gonna, not saying anything bad about mechanics. A lot of my friends are mechanics, and just saying it's the first idea that comes to mind. But it's one of those things where it's like you have to be comfortable to sit there. Like if the people are gonna make fun of you for asking a question and trying to learn something, like one, those aren't the kind of people you want to be around, and two, you have to be confident enough in yourself to be able to just be like, I just don't know that. Like if you'd like to explain it to me so I can learn, then that would be great. But if not, if you're just gonna, be an asshole about it, then just, I just want to be around you anymore. You're not the type of person I want to talk to.
You know what? I think this ties back into trading, investing, almost completely, because I've had times where somebody will message me and rather than, and they're new and they know they're new, but rather than trying to be like approach it with the conversation with like an open mind, they'll start like throwing out like those those buzzwords you hear on CNBC or any of the news things, and to sound like they know what they're talking about. And I'm listening, I'm like, that's not the right context. Nope, that's not related. Like it's like you're not helping yourself, and you're just embarrassing yourself in front of me. It's like just say you don't know. I'll fill in the blanks for you. Like that's it.
Mm-hmm. It's tough though, right? Because like everybody wants to be a hero, like especially in the stock market. Like you see all these stories about people making millions of dollars every day, and it's like you want to just jump in there and learn all this like new lingo and stuff. Like I have people that have messaged me and been like, hey man, like have you heard that I don't know, this ratio on this stock, or like the Fed's doing this, or FINRA this, or like SEC that, or whatever. And like somebody will say some abbreviation of something, and I'll be like, what is that? Like I've never heard that term before in my life. And they're like, you don't know what that is? Like, man, like, are you serious? Like, oh my God, you're missing out on so much. And this is coming from someone who's been trading for like a month. And here I am, like I make money every day of the week. Like I got this person who's like, basically saying like, oh, I'm an idiot because I don't know this stuff. And it's like, I don't need to know that stuff. Maybe it's outside what I need to do. Maybe it's something that can help me. Like, I don't know. But like the fact of the matter is, like, I know how to do what I do with my system. So if there's something outside of that, then sure, like I can learn it. It might be completely irrelevant to me, but if you want to tell me what it is, then go right ahead. But if you're gonna come to me, like someone who's been doing this for 4 years and you've only been in the game for like a month, and you're gonna look at me like I don't know what I'm doing, like I'm sorry, man. Have fun losing your money.
Well, I think they don't realize you have a kill switch where it's like, how's your bank account looking? Like you could just throw that at any given moment.
Yeah, I'll just pull my phone and show you my investment account, and then we'll shut them up pretty quick. I don't need to do that. I just gotta say, oh yeah, okay, whatever. You're smarter than me. Have fun. Talk to you later.
It's like you got an order sheet list like a mile long, like from just a month ago.
Yeah. But again, it's that kind of herd mentality, and like a lot of people get humbled and they get over that, right? Like they'll start like that, and then they'll kind of they mature and they learn, and they realize like, okay, I really don't know what the fuck I'm doing, and then you get better and you kind of come full circle and you get back to it, and then like so it's not like the end of the world, but like I just think that's a huge learning curve that people can eliminate if they just realize that, like, trading and investing is kind of one of those weird things where like people think that you don't need to have an education to be able to do it. Like they think it really is as easy as following what CNBC says, or Motley Fool, or whatever potato in my ass 500 on Twitter says, or whatever the fuck these guys are. It's like they want to follow all these guys, and like they think it's literally that easy, right? But it's like it's just funny because the people that do this for a living and the people that make a lot of money at this, like the way I think about it is like, think about Wall Street. Like, are you going to get hired by like, say, Wells Fargo or like, a big investment bank or like a hedge fund? Like, are they just going to hire someone off the street to put their clients' money in places because they think they know what they're doing after a month from reading tweets? Like, no, that's absurd, right? They would never do that in a million years. You got to go to school for years. You got to learn how to do everything. You got to work the shit jobs, work your way up. So it's just kind of one of these weird, like, because it is a career, like it's a business. Like if you want to be a trader where you're making money and you're not just like, throwing your money in the S&P and forgetting about it. Like if you really want to know what you're doing, you have to treat it like a business. You have to pay for education. You have to learn how to do these things. You have to do trial and error, and it takes years before you're going to make money at it. But a lot of people just really think it's like super easy. So I think that's kind of like where a lot of that problem lies. And then people that survive, that first year or so of that learning curve where they're just getting, punched in the gut all the time because they don't know what they're doing. Those are the ones that can kind of humble themselves and come, because it happened to me, right? And then you kind of humble yourself. You come out on the other side and you're like, okay, if I really want to do this, like I have to just, actually learn how to do this. I need to study. I need to take my time. Like I need to treat this like I'm going to university. It's going to take, it took me 4 years, which is as long as somebody goes to university for any job, some even longer. And now that I've done my, 4-year education through trial and error, through paid courses, through investing, through learning from people, now I'm at a point where I can actually do it and make money.
I think we talked about it once, like roughly both me and you hit about 10,000 hours before we like randomly, completely randomly, both hit 10,000 hours before we're like, yep, we were feeling pretty comfortable then.
Yeah, like it takes a long, and if you talk to anybody who's been trading or like, who makes money consistently trading, like most people say on average it's like a year to 2 years like full time. So like if you've been trading a year or two like full time, like that's all you're doing, then you're probably going to get to a point where you're like you can start making really consistent money, like decent income. So if you're like you and I, where you're working full time outside of that, you basically cut that time in half, if not more. So, you and I were looking at like, say, like in the 4 to 5 year range, right? Because we were working full time. So the only time we could study the markets and learn how to do this is on, after work. We spend a few hours every night and on the weekends. So like our work week is only 20 hours in the stock market, roughly.
And to be honest, I don't think I could have sped it up any longer, because I know me. I've tried to learn a lot of skills over the years, different ones, and I know me. I'm very slow at first, like stupid slow at first. I'll be like the I'm going to use the R word again. It's going to be the dumbass at the back of the class, and then but my learning curve accelerates. Like I'll have a bunch of eureka moments, and then it'll start to accelerate. So my learning curve is not a straight line at all. Like for the first maybe 2 years, I might just yeah.
Yeah, I'm like super stubborn. Like I'm the same way my dad is. Like we're both just super stubborn. So like I'm the kind of guy where it's like, it's like, oh, you make a mistake once and you try to do the same thing again. Like that's the definition of insanity, like expecting a different result. I'm that idiot that makes the same mistake 15 times before I think something's going to change, right? So like, if I could do it, anybody can do it. And like that's the reality. It's like, because that's just the type of person I am. Is like I just get so stubborn that I'm like, I'm gonna do this right, and like this is the way to do it, and everybody else doesn't know what they're talking about, and so it takes me twice as long as it takes everybody else.
This is effectively us. We're learning. Remember the episode of Sideshow Bob?
Yeah.
The rakes in the face. There you go.
Yeah. 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 That's literally what my learning process is like.
The thing is, I don't even know if there's any other way unless you're like just a savant. Because to me, it's like what we're basically saying is we have to be proven wrong, and just once is not enough. You have to prove me wrong over and over again before it gets into my head that okay, this is I'm convinced this is not the right way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it probably amplified 10 times in the stock market because like there's so many other factors around it. Like if you look at a chart pattern, like we've talked about this before, if the fundamentals behind the chart pattern or the news or whatever doesn't line up, then the trade might not work. So you can look at a chart and then it works, and then you do it again and then it works, and then you do it 10 more times and it doesn't work every time, and it's like, what the fuck is going on? And then you start digging into it more and you realize like, oh well, the news wasn't right, or the volume wasn't right, or the float wasn't right, and then so it's the learning curve is much longer in my opinion.
you just got an amazing segue to the last topic I wanted to touch on. It was the Galaxy trade. So this is a perfect example of why it's important to be proven wrong more than once, because this time, while I was wrong, my method was right. So, and I wanted to touch on this so viewers can get the other side, because I don't know if we've talked about this kind of thing before. Here, let me get
so just go through like exactly where you bought and where you sold, because like we talked about this in our chat, and like it was a perfect sell.
Well, so this is what I love about TradingView, because I can do replay. So this is exactly what I was looking at. I think it was the 11th, whatever that day, that was Wednesday. So this is what I bought Galaxy Wave in the $23, $26. So I'm in the money now, but I'm trying to decide where to sell. So it had this giant gap up and wick down day, and it bounced, right? And so so you don't use the fibs a lot, but I love the fibs. And so I'm used the fib simple retrace, and based on my research, it hits this part about 80, almost 90% of the time, and then it'll sell off again. So it'll reclaim, it'll bounce and reclaim, and like to the penny. Look, you pull it from the very top to the very bottom, right there, 618. It's so technical, right? And so what I know is when it sells off, and it did that day, it hit it, the price hit it and wicked back down, right? I'm like, this means it's going to go further. And so as soon as I saw that, like I'm working that day too. So as soon as I saw that, I freaked, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to market execute half my position, just get out of there. I'm in the money, whatever, right? And then as the days are progressing, like it starts to go up higher and higher. This is the hourly, right? So this was the morning, like 9:30 at the open. I'm like, all right, this is going to be a bad day, and it just keeps going up and up and up. And what I didn't realize happened was at 10:30, was it Miami? One of those places said they were going to start. What happens? They're going to start selling municipal bonds in the form of tokens, the Miami coin. And if you buy those tokens, you're going to get paid your interest in Bitcoin. And so this was a big deal for Bitcoin integration into like a municipality, right? And so obviously I got fucked, like, and that's why the price went up.
Yeah, but you had a news article. So like when I look, like if you guys haven't watched, I guess it'll be last week's episode. Like I go through, how to size into positions and stuff like that. If you zoom out just a little bit, David, just so we can kind of see like that trend. So like so can you just draw like kind of just like a really rough trend line, like just up that big slope there? Just like really rough, like up a little bit more, like higher, kind of like right to where it like broke down, like increase. No, like make it steeper so that all that's below it.
Like that?
Yeah,
like
kind of
that?
like something like that, roughly.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, just drop that in there and then zoom back into where your trade was. So like this is exactly what I was just talking about on the podcast that we had last week, where I drew everything out in paint. So like just zoom right in onto like just that little area there where like your trade was. Right, so it's like really clear. So you see, so that big red candle to the left there, like where it was above the front side of the trend line there. So that big red candle there, if you look at the well, you took the volume off, but if you look at the volume on that one, the volume, see how big that volume is on the bottom there?
Yep.
So like for me, like again, guys, watch the last episode because this lines up perfectly. So like what I'd do is I'd look at the bottom of that candle, and that would be one of those daily lines that I'm looking at because it's got big volume, right? So that's going to be a resistance line. Like that's going to be a support and resistance line. So what happens is as we roll over and we go into the backside, this is exactly what I was talking about. You wait for the bounce, and then where does the bounce line up? Right where David sold, right at the bottom of that candle. So that would have been a perfect short entry. And that's like, David, like you're looking at this on the Fibonacci and you're thinking, okay, as soon as it gets up to there, that's where I sell. I'm looking at this based on the daily chart and the volume, and I'm drawing my line in there, and they line up perfectly, right? Like that's exactly where I would short, and I would short full size right there. So if that news article hadn't come out, I could bet you 95% that would have sold all the way back down, and I would have covered it at the previous lows. That's the trade right there that I went over last week. And that exact trade. So the only reason that didn't work is because a news article came out. Yeah. If that news article came out, David, your sell was perfect regardless.
Right.
And that's where I would have shorted full side.
Right.
And the next line.
And like, if you need any more confirmation, this is like, I use this too. Like the volume was increasing as the price was decreasing. That means this thing's got some real momentum. It's not some bullshit sell-off.
Yeah. So when you see that big green candle, like look at the volume on the green candle up into that line. That's why people get scared, right? Because you see this huge volume up into a resistance level. That's perfect. Because if you get that big push of volume and then it stuffs it off that line, to me, that's like confirmation. Okay, this thing's going down. Like I could sit back and relax and let that trade happen. Like that is as perfect as it gets for a short setup. The only reason it didn't work was because that news article came out.
Look at that. Like the wick is a 2.5, almost 3% move. Like, come on.
Yeah. That would have gone back down to, what is that, like 30, 36.30, 36.50, whatever it is, the prior lows?
Oh, shit. Hang on.
No, like the bottom of that, like where it bounced up from
30,
originally.
36.20,
right at the very bottom.
Yeah, 36.23.
Yeah, if that news article hadn't come out, I would have bet you, I would have been almost 100% certain it would have gone back down to that line.
See, where I would have bought was here. The 236 fib, negative 236. It's like,
okay.
But I bet you would have found some technical.
Yeah, see, I would have covered. Yeah, I would have covered at those prior lows there for sure if I was shorting that. But that's a perfect setup. Like if you haven't watched the last episode, watch it and then watch this one, and you'll see how perfect that is.
It's funny how it lines up so.
It's that easy.
Right?
Like it's literally that easy. That's all we're looking at. David's looking at Fibonacci's. I'm looking at big red candles with a line and a volume bar, and that's it. The news article kind of screwed this one up, but aside from that, this is a perfect trade. And that's all we're looking at. Like it is that simple.
Yep. It's funny how that worked out. But on that topic, I just wanted to. I'm going to close with this one thought because I said it once before, but I think it bears talking about again. It's a bias called resulting. And I got it from poker. And it's the idea that you judge the quality of your decisions on the result of the decisions, right? And so if I judged the quality of my decision based on the result, I would have been like, oh, that was a stupid move. But that's not what happened. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We both have technical
reasons. Move. I texted you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you told me like in the chat, you're like, oh fuck, it's going higher. But then you said that there was a news article that came out, and I texted you. I was like, that was a perfect sell because 9 times out of 10, that thing would have sold right back off to the lows. And you would have been in the red. I was like, that was a perfect sell.
Yeah,
because that's where I would have shorted it. And if I would have shorted it, you don't want to be holding on.
It's good. I'm gonna watch that area more closely now. Every time I see a 618, I'm like, fucking, this is where Kalen's gonna short. I'm like, get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, as long as you have a big volume like day that lines up with that level, then yes, 100% every time.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so like the idea is like, but that's not what happened, right? Like the result of my decision is completely independent with the quality of my decision because everything from the quality side, the indicators, the fundamentals, everything lined up correctly, and so. Just like poker, like you could play the perfect hand, bet the perfect size all the way until the river and the wrong card comes out, you're fucked, you lose. But did you do anything wrong? No. And so that's what's really important for traders to understand that their own process to be able to judge, like, did I actually make a mistake here? Or is this just reality being reality, which is random?
Yeah. And in this case, you didn't make a mistake. Like that would, and like if I had a shorted that, I would have lost, and that would have been the 1 out of 10 times that this pattern doesn't work because there was an external factor that you can't see coming. So
yeah. And it goes into your point about we'll wrap it up, but it just goes into your thing about sizing out too, because obviously I didn't go all out. I sold half my position, so I'm still participating.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, goons, I think you've learned enough for today, so we'll wrap it up here. Thanks, Kalen. Thanks, Sam, and we'll see you again next week.